When Haolonggood offered its Stegosaurus ungulatus, it was welcomed by collectors and Stegosaur fans alike, since it's rare we ever get this species. I love that model, but there was one problem. With Haolonggood, I usually like at least one of their color variants, and for Stegosaurus they offered 3. Unfortunately, none of them hit the mark for me. Indeed, I felt that in their color choices, Haolonggood had gone from the sublime to the ridiculous, which as a boring guy with a preference for the orange and green trope hit doubly hard. However, today we have their newly released 1-20 Stegosaurus. As you can see, it comes in a nice box. And you can see the packaging. And inside there's the base. And the cartoon wall cutout appearance of these plates. And sadly, I think you'll also see something else. Yup, you'll see that my thagomizer didn't quite make it. Fortunately, the cut is very clean, so I'm going to put a temporary adhesive on it to show you at the end, and then send it for repairs. Hopefully, yours will survive transit. Just a word of warning, mine at least isn't very stable at all. The feet don't contact the surface optimally for very flat surfaces, so be really careful with yours. Ungulatus has often been estimated at 7 meters or 23 feet, though the apex specimen has been claimed to be up to 8.2 meters. I still don't know if this has been verified, but at a length of 45 centimeters or 18.1 inches, 1-20th scale would represent a whopping 9 meter specimen. And taking 7 meters, the scale is about 1-15, but as you can see, this looks to be too small a scale for 1-15. Incidentally, for the apex's 8.2 meters, this would be about 1-18 scale. In terms of pose, it's a simple walking one, an animal taking its time, striding confidently with that up-high tail, and those narrowly tapered dermal plates that seem to characterize the Ungulatus species. And you can't get more traditional and obvious than the very definite green and orange here, which I really love. But it's the rendering that makes a difference, and here you see how masterfully applied the paint is. You have very natural looking markings. And here, I love how in the back leg there's an almost dapple look to it. It's orange on green, but the exact handling of these two main colors we'll look at more closely in a bit. And even from the back, it's got an interesting mix of colors. Now the head. Starting at the slender snout, we see immediately minute scales dressing the entire head. The brown fade in the beak, the yellows of the face, the green in the mandible, transitioning up here to a darker brown again. The whole thing just ties together very cohesively into a very nice portrait. The eyeballs are also carefully painted, as you can see here zoomed in. And we'll be seeing plenty of my armor today, I think, just so you appreciate the fineness of these scales. Now we take a look at the armor in the throat. And it's done in a rather unusual, almost overlapping shingle fashion. Look at those raised scales around the ear hole. You can already start to see, and in just this region, the beautiful color blends. And dorsally, look at the tight interlocking of this mosaic of small scales, looking almost like tightly interlocking capitulagulli. Another quick look at the underside again. We can really appreciate how the throat armor and skin folds look so convincing. And starting to move down a bit, we see the start of that vibrant blend of greens that we'll also see elsewhere. And here are these skin folds, just an early indicator of what you'll see elsewhere again. And we already see the start of that dazzling display of dermal plates here in the neck. I'll see the texture here in this keratinous structure. Beautifully blended colors. And even here in this small plate, as we catch the light, you can see the surface is not completely smooth, but rather pitted or finely roughened, and so it looks very organic. And up here we get a little sneak peek of the very finely sculpted scales in the skin. But I think we really want to see the plates here, so let's get to them. If you look at these grooves in detail, they're not the simple parallel lines we often see depicted. There's a very organic look to them in their irregularity. Imagine the organic process as keratin is laid down. You'll see infusions of brown and dry brushing in different areas, which really brings it all to life. Now as we look really closely at the medial surface of one of these plates, you'll see something cool. The surface isn't completely smooth, but rather have very minute, very shallow texturing. And so if I run my finger along it, I can feel a kind of granularity. You can just make out some very faint and tiny grooves. There's just so much to look at, and for such an important structure, it's wonderful to get this detail. They've really paid attention to this special anatomical feature. We've seen nowadays in even smaller models how at the interface where the bony structures emerge, a raised ridge marks the spot. But see what they can do on a larger scale. Even this seemingly humble feature has many different shapes and sizes, making up a kind of a double row of differently sized scales. And the color blend from the root of the plate as we travel more peripherally. And here you can note a kind of cross-texturing in the groove here. And now we're back to the right lateral side. And I think you can see from the glinting light where the highlights are. There you can make out the faint texturing, a kind of a speckled look, like a gunpowdered finish, that really just elevates this above plenty of other models I've seen. They're not homogeneous facsimiles of each other, with differences in shape and color tones. For example, this one here has a lighter, almost bleached look in this part. And the mottling up here as well. Now just a quick overview of this spectacular array of flame-like plates. Now just a dorsal view here, where you see that alternating pattern of the plates. They're closely placed together without much angulation. Now we get to the body, and I really have to say I love this green here. You can immediately see the embarrassment of riches in terms of skin texture, this combo of a mosaic and a rather beaded appearance. As we admire all that detail, just notice how complexly dressed in all this color and how they all play against each other. The scutes are just cherries on top. The color transitions result in more color tones, so the paint application is not just satisfyingly complex, but also more organic. Makes you imagine how hard it would be to see on the floor of the forest, with the sunlight through a canopy casting a complex shadow on this animal. As always, going down the arm and shoulder, you see how the limb is just draped in a finery of scales and complex color. Not only are the folds and wrinkles realistic, but the way the scales are then integrated with them flows very nicely. And moving down the forearm, You can see that the hand again is gifted with 2 hooved toes. There really isn't a single part that's boring to look at. And the unguals being painted so nicely really puts a feather in the cap of it. We now move to the hind limbs and look at that crazy detail. See how it almost crams the thigh. Again, that green is so pleasing, and we see the interplay of colors here, and all enhanced by how natural the markings look. The scales dressing the muscle bulges. Then going into the feet, we see again the well-painted nails. You can see a sheen in the hoof right here. Then going up, you'll see again the scales just wrapping around the folds again. I can't believe how much time I'm looking and talking about this seemingly insignificant part of the animal. And just look at this beautiful color. I really can imagine this blending so well in the forest. Again, loving the scales and skin folds. Going down the tail, I could waffle on about the detail, the color application, which is just as superb as elsewhere, but really, we're really talking about the business end of the animal, aren't we? That thagomizer. Still, let me note how finely intricate these scales are. And then here we are, those dangerous spikes which have a lived-in, grown-in look. You'll see scratches all over. Plenty of scoring, and that imperfection just makes it look like an organic structure. Another side, there's some scuffing up here, but overall, just look at it. That cragginess that speaks of a lifetime of growth, healing, battle. In a way, breaking this off gives me the chance to show you all those details again more easily. You're not going to see this on any small model. And I forgot to say that even in this humble medial side of the tail, you see such complexity of color, which makes the animal more real. And a quick look now at the underside, and of course, all that wondrous skin detail. There's no part that's neglected of meticulous sculpting and paint application. Quick insert of the repaired thagomizer, spikes spread very nicely indeed. And now a quick look at the excellent looking base. Now quite an unusual shape in the body of water here. And starting here we see the detail in the rock, the lichen or the moss with a color complexity I wasn't expecting at this small size. And continuing, you can just feel that graininess. Now, I'm not going to touch it, but it's very textured here and likely to flake off if you're not careful. I've seen many excellent bases that just can't seem to get the plants right, and they all look so plasticky. Here you see this kind of a resin replicating the water, and it's so clear you can see down to the bottom. Very nice indeed. Here we have the brand, the scale, and the number 155. I've never gotten a nice number before. Just a very quick look to compare to the smaller 1:35 now. You can see they're actually exactly the same pose, down to the angulation of the hands and feet. Now fortunately, it's not just a direct upscale, with much increased complexity of paint and sculpt thanks to the larger canvas. And for something more familiar, the Wilson T-Rex and Cameron T-Rex. Now here are some shots of the stego on the base, and actually, because of the unevenness of the surface, you should be able to find a position that's even more stable than on a flat surface. It's not often that Haolonggood makes these specials, and so I'm glad they've tackled now a very important and significant dinosaur. As a larger model of exceptional quality, it's a showcase for how, regardless of how good a 1:35 model is, how great it can be at 1:20. If you're looking for a showpiece or centerpiece model, this is one worthy of consideration. With the sideshow Dinosauria line now extinct, and PNSO having stopped their larger models, these Haolonggood 1:20 models are a viable replacement line. Not only is their detail and paintwork of similar, and I might even say higher quality at times, Haolonggood is a worthy successor to fill that niche. They've already made the Pachyrhinosaurus and the Spletosaurus, so maybe they'll do an Ankylosaur next. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.